TV app on the app stores of iOS and Android devices. Windows Phone, if you still got one of those things too. I don't think they have that though. When you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Both apps are free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV Sticks, Roku, and Roku Sticks, all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Folks, how's everybody doing? This is Scott Churchson alongside Mr. Obi Schottenfeld and Mr. Robert Stats, and this is the Sports Den. We have a lot of things to go into today, a lot of cool stuff to discuss. We're going to be talking about what's happening both past and future with New England, both New England and also the Saints as well. Talking a little bit of the NCAA March Madness, talking basically that sport called basketball, which we're going to be discussing a little bit there too. But let's start this off. Rob, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Glad to be back. Sorry I wasn't here last week. Was doing the work thing.
All right. No, I get it. Listen, so you got to do what you got to. Listen, money takes priority.
And getting my teeth fixed finally, which I'm still like one chiclet short of a fresh new grill.
Well, you didn't get diamonds in there or nothing, right?
I got the top ones fixed, and then they my doctor is really good. He went over. He didn't like the way the one was sitting, and it was in, and he's like, "Oh, we got to take it out." I'm like, "Okay." I think I have the record for being in the chair the longest at our dental office. He's like, "You're a trooper, dude." Because I don't know how you sit here. And I was like, I think a lot. I think about a lot of things while I got the bite block in. I'm like, I might fall asleep. Yeah. I was like, it's like, he's like, it's like a sport for you. Being in it's like an endurance sport. I'm like, yeah, it's rough.
Little shop of horrors over here.
Yeah. How you doing, Obi?
I'm great. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for always being part. So I want to start this off. Right now, we've got a lot of NFL stuff to go into. Drew Brees announced his retirement, and in the process, the New Orleans Saints promptly either opened up their wallet or didn't open up their wallet for a Taysom Hill contract that will range somewhere upwards of 4 years, possibly as little as 0. So before we get into that part of things, I want to go into Drew Brees. I want to talk about his legacy a little bit. My take personally is surefire Hall of Famer. I'm not going to argue that, but I think a little bit of a disappointment. He had one Super Bowl there. I'm going to go into it a little bit more, but I want to get your opinions on where his legacy is going to stand. Give me your thoughts. Obi, let's start off with you, man.
I think anyone who's getting into listening to me knows that I don't like to do that about players in team sports. Drew Brees was definitely helped by finding the right coach in Sean Payton. You could just see the change in numbers. He was also hurt by a team that did not invest correctly in defense. So there's those two things that he's got for his on-the-field numbers. I think what he meant to New Orleans off the field may have been a much bigger feather in his cap. He won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award along the way. That first season back in the Superdome, that Monday Night Football game, which wasn't even him. But that began, his career there with Sean Payton, and a team that had gotten one playoff win to a team that got a Super Bowl victory. You felt like they were in it every year when the season began. I think more of that stuff resonates with me than his numbers, which are fantastic. He did have, only one Super Bowl, only one, he had only one at the same time in his career. He had to watch Manning win 2. So, I think that is when you talk about the end results, when you're comparing quality of quarterbacks, Manning beat our boy Brady as well. So Manning really throws a wrench into that whole looking at the final results things of rating these guys, which is good for me in my argument that it's football. It's really a shame to rate the guys independent of their teams and their circumstances.
It's such a team sport. We've talked about the GOAT before in this case. Rob, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with Obi though too. Drew Brees, and I agree with you as well. He's first ballot, in my opinion, first ballot, surefire Hall of Famer. What he did statistically on the field was amazing, but also what he did for the city of New Orleans off the field was it was even better than what he ever did on the field. He went to his city in a time of, post Katrina. I'll never forget the story about Sean Payton and the execs trying to keep him out of the 9th Ward during the tour because they didn't want him to see how ravaged it was by Hurricane Katrina, and they get lost and they're driving through there, and that ends up being the number one reason he goes to New Orleans, because he's like, this city needs hope. The city needs something to turn themselves around with. And yeah, he only has the one Super Bowl, but I mean, he was the victim of the Minnesota Miracle, or the Miracle of Minnesota. Yeah, they just didn't have a good defense around him. He always could put a team on his back. They just, the Saints, when, like Obi said, it's a team sport, and you could score all the points in the world, but if you can't stop the other team from scoring all the points in the world +1, you can't win. But yeah, he's a guy that he's a great athlete, but an even better human being. And I love that the way he retired too was so Drew Brees. Like, his kids come on and like, our dad's retiring, so he could spend more time with us. Woo! And he even said in his goodbye, like his speech, that on Instagram, I didn't go on Instagram because I'm still on my social media hiatus. I saw it when I watched the video I Googled the video for it. And it was one of the news stations was like, yeah, he said, I'm just retiring from football. I'm not retiring from New Orleans. And I think that shows the bond that he has with the city of New Orleans, the Saints fan base, and everything, that he really is a saint in New Orleans. Like, he's the real life saint of New Orleans. 15 years ago, he went there and he turned their luck around. And I think if he doesn't go there, they might not even have a team in New Orleans right now. Like, it could have gotten so bad that they ended up moving out and going somewhere else. So, and like, that Monday night game, his first game back, it was just one of the most memorable moments. The block punt. I mean, I think it was Reggie Bush's first game too, because I remember the crowd chanting Reggie's name because it was going to be the first time he touched the ball in the NFL, and the ball never even got to him. It ended up in the end zone because somebody blocked it.
Like I said, yes, first ballot Hall of Famer, phenomenal athlete. I would have liked to have seen more, not from him, but I think the team he inherited and the team that he worked with, it didn't do the job that it needed to do. You remember there was a couple of years there where they were the subject of bad calls at the end, but they blew leads to get to that point. And that every player would be like, we put ourselves in that position. You want to talk about the blown calls, fine, but we should not have been in that position. He got a Super Bowl again, and I think you guys already mentioned this. He got a Super Bowl at a time when New Orleans needed one. They needed something to rally around, and by God, he absolutely did that. But I would have liked to have seen for his career more than one Super Bowl appearance, more than one Super Bowl win. You look at Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning did get his second one with Denver. Granted, it was more the defense that handled it, but he still had that second. He deserved a second one. He deserved to get more than just the one that he ended up getting. And as a result, he retires. And to me, it's a little bit bittersweet, because I think he just deserved better than he got. His playoff record. I
forgot about that. Yeah, that was the other thing I was trying to think of, was the horrible call, like the pass interference call. I mean, but you never know too, because that team, like you said, they blew a lead in that game, and their defense wasn't great. And that Super Bowl was like the 13-3 or something, like the low scoring Super Bowl game between two of the best offenses in the league that year. So you never know what would have happened. Yeah, but I totally agree with you on that too. It would have been nice to see him get there a second time. He had, I think, the year they lost to the Bears, like they played up in Chicago, and I'm like, yeah, if they play that game in the Superdome, he probably wins and he probably goes. But it's all part of the game too, in that matter.
Yeah, sometimes it's more luck in certain ways, but I mean, from a playoff passing standpoint, with New Orleans, 96.9 passing, 17 games, 35 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, which is a phenomenal number there. Completion percentage 66.3. But again, through all of that, a 9-8 playoff record in 17 games, and only one trip to the Super Bowl.
I mean, if you look at those numbers, it's nice. 17 games, that's a season, right?
Yeah.
35 and 14 is crazy in the regular season, and then you're saying that's all against playoff teams.
True.
That is some real powerful numbers to look at when you put it in that perspective. And I think that needs to be said on terms of the positive. And his value overall in a lot of statistical numbers has him as the second most valuable player ever to play the game. Did it for a very long time. And the other thing about him is we have Russell Wilson gets to say thank you to him. Kyler Murray gets to say thank you to him. Baker Mayfield gets to say thank you to him. He proved you can be a quarterback at 6 feet tall. I mean, one of the reasons San Diego went and picks Manning and trades for Phillips is because they don't believe that a 6-footer can do the job. He wasn't horrific in San Diego. He did have the major injury, and that was obviously, we're definitely not going to keep him after that. But he wasn't horrific It was, oh, he's small, he can't do it. And then he came and he did it. And I heard somebody on one of the TV stations, and now they got mocked by their co-host for saying it, but he's the Allen Iverson of football, doing it for the little guy. I think it's a little different because whatever, but that's another bit that goes for him. But yeah, I think everybody wanted to see him win more. But the pass interference call that they lost that game, I mean, to me, that doesn't get to be one of those feathers in his cap. He had the ball in his hands after that pass interference. So he had a chance to win that game with his offense. It didn't have to go down to his defense. So that game, as opposed to the Minnesota Miracle, I think is more of a blemish than, the team let him down.
He was also a victim of the Beastquake game, the Seattle game, which that video like last month for whatever reason, that video was like all over Twitter. I follow Marshawn, and it was just constantly popping up, and it wasn't even him. Like, it was people tagging him in it. I'm like, yeah, this is one of the most like memorable playoff plays of all time. But again, that's where I think he came up short a lot too, is that it was always like he always seemed to lose on the road most of the time, aside from the pass interference call, but like lose up in Seattle, the big game, lose up in Chicago. So when he played him at home, he was tough to beat as long as he got all the calls. I know we made a great point though too. He did get the ball back after that bad call and couldn't finish it up.
But before we move on to it, find us always on Twitter, on SSW Sports Den, and also on Facebook at Spangler Sports Den. When you talk about New Orleans, at this point, basically as soon as the announcement was made and people were still reacting to that, New Orleans came out with a potentially as high as a 4-year, $140 million contract extension for Taysom Hill. I'm back. I don't know what to make of this contract, because this contract to me is unique because of the fact that it literally has 0 to 4 years involved. There's, it's possible, that they might actually just cut him automatically, go to Jameis Winston, and lose very, very little money. They've been able to navigate the salary cap, which is lower this year. They've been able to navigate it a little bit. But I'm curious of your take on this, because he's a little bit older as a quarterback. He doesn't have necessarily a lot of games, at quarterback for the team. His numbers really are just, honestly, it's a risky maneuver. And I'm curious to get your takes on it, to drop upwards, like I said, $140 million over 4 years on a guy who does not have a huge quarterback resume.
So my first thought is they are very seriously chasing Russell Wilson. That is my first thought. And that's why they want to be able to cut him.
Okay.
My second thought is they did not play Winston last year when Bruce got hurt, not because they didn't have faith in him, but because they did, and they didn't want anybody else to see what they were going to be able to get for cheap. So now they have Winston, but they have Winston and they value him at what they signed him for, which is just enough to be afraid that he's going to be a turnover machine. And they have a guy who, Winston's a turnover machine, they can play. And if Winston isn't a turnover machine, or they get Breeze, they free up all that cap space. It just seems like he's still what he's always been, and that is this sort of Swiss Army knife of a backup that we could start if we have to start, and if we need to shed him, let's get rid of him. And for him to accept that deal, that was a little surprising more that he would accept the deal with no guarantees versus them accept. Like, I don't know why he didn't accept, forget it. I'll play 1 year at a much higher price just to guarantee me money. No one else is, I think, going to take him.
A lot of it was that when there was one game where he threw for 3 touchdowns. So I think they're banking a lot on that part of it. But it's a very curious, low risk, high reward type of contract, because of the fact that later they can cut him and basically lose very, very little in the process. I almost wonder if this is going to be becoming a more common contract, or a more common contract going forward, because of the fact that you have the ability to cut and defer so much salary cap towards the back end of it, that it's not going to hurt you as much. You just saw it with Tom Brady's contract. Now you're seeing it with Taysom Hill's contract as well. I almost wonder if that's going to be the future of the league in some ways, until the salary cap starts to come back north again.
According to CBS Sports, they actually freed up $7.5 million.
They did. I know.
Deal, so.
But at what point do you have to pay that? That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that they know what they have with him. Like Obi said, he's the Swiss Army knife. You know, he is kind of what the Broncos and the Jets hoped Tim Tebow would have been. Like, that's who Taysom Hill really is. Like, when he's kind of that true wildcat quarterback, and like the dude can throw the ball. Mm-hmm. Like that's what makes him kind of worth the potential value that he brings to when you sign him. And I think the Jameis Winston situation last year too is there's a lot of people who think they kind of kept him under wraps. Like, okay, he's improved. Let's not spill the beans. Let's keep him for another year. But he also ended up in COVID protocol, like the worst possible time, because that's kind of when Breeze got hurt. Mm-hmm. So Taysom Hill ended up getting the reps. And I think Sean Payton may have also just been like, you know what, let me just stick with the guy that has been getting the reps for these 2 weeks. And we know what we've got with Jameis Winston. He wasn't bad. Like I said, he just turned the ball. He threw 30 interceptions in one season, but if you can run the ball and he can cut that in half, like, you've got a solid quarterback who could take you on a playoff run. So they were in a good situation, I think. And Breeze, being Drew Brees, didn't drag it out. Mm-hmm. Like, he knew, okay, the cap. If you noticed, he waited till they set the cap and was like, okay, time for me to go. Like, they're not going to have as much money. Being the consummate team player, when he was done, like, I'm out. Like, there's no sense in me coming back for one last run. It's time to move on, you guys. And they freed up another $7.5 million after he left. So it's going to be interesting with the whole league, like you guys were saying. Like, New England apparently just opened up their wallets finally, and but the Chiefs got the old New England guard or something. I saw that yesterday because they had dumped like the two guys who got hurt. And I was like, yeah, it's going to be a wild carousel. Like, that Aaron Jones signed a 4-year extension or deal with the Packers. And when the cap goes down, it's always interesting because, there are guys out there like, oh, I'm going to get my money this year. And you're like, the cap went down. Like, I'm not getting my money this year.
And yet a lot of players did open, the wallets were definitely opened up in a lot of ways. If we have time, we'll go into the Patriots. And I think what's going to happen there, they are a potential 10-6, 11-5, team, I think, for this year, because their schedule is actually very light. Ironically enough, also, I'll come back to it in a sec, one of the teams they're playing this year is Tampa. So that's going to be interesting to see that's going to happen. But anyway, as far as Taysom Hill goes, I can see them being an 8-8, 9-17 next year. I think it's going to be an adjustment for everybody involved to not have Drew Brees. I think they might lose a year and then become a playoff team a year later. But it would not surprise me if they're a 500-ish team, also knowing that you got to play Tampa and Tom Brady twice.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be tough. I think that Drew Brees leaving makes you feel like Tampa Bay is getting 2 wins.
Yeah.
That they did not have last year. On the other hand, I still know what I saw from Tom Brady last year, which was a guy who looked old, very inconsistent. He found his groove in the playoffs. A guy who over the last several years has gotten better as the season goes on. It's almost like he knows that he's got to pace himself as he's older. So will they lose even more games early in the season? And look, they're bringing back the same roster that they brought back last year. That hasn't worked in quite some time. The Eagles tried that. Didn't work. Kansas City tried that. It did get into the Super Bowl, but it still didn't work. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I don't know what's going to happen in Carolina. It looks like they're garbage. They'll probably be garbage. You just don't know.
Also keeping in mind that they're going to have a little bit of a tougher schedule too.
Yeah, they're going to have the two extra games that are good. And we don't even, and if they go to 17 games, we don't know if the third game is going to be a strength of schedule game as well. We might be up to 3, possibly 4 strength of schedule games, changing everything around.
Yeah, I don't know the breakdown of the 17 games. I'm not a fan of the 17 games. I know that basically it's all about money. It's money, it's revenue. I get that. I personally am not a fan of it myself. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but
I've never been a fan of it. I'm not a fan of Thursday night games either, but that's like when I saw that the cap was going down because the league didn't make as much money, the first thing I thought of was like, good. I hope Roger Goodell is sitting at home stressing out, because that's the only feather that man ever has in his cap is I make the league money. I make the league more money year after year.
No, I think the league makes the league money.
Yeah, but he gets all the credit. He takes the credit for it, and that's why he keeps his job, because in my opinion, he's the worst commissioner in all of sports. And I say that was worse than Gary Bettman. And I know hockey fans hate Gary.
Though. You're going that way on that. Huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think anybody who knows sports will tell you that Roger Goodell is probably the worst commissioner in all of sports. Like he ranks up there, like he's like the American version of FIFA. Like that's what he reminds me of. Like there's always something going on. Like it's just ridiculous. And then he shows up on the virtual draft like second round, and he's inebriated. Like we're going to Vegas again. Oh yeah, like I would have just fired him. He's a clown in my opinion. I have the clown commish shirt. I'll wear it on a show one night. But yeah, I actually was just looking at I didn't realize all the people the Patriots signed. Like wow.
I have the list. I have the list in front of me here.
Yeah, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, Matthew Judon, Dietrich Weiss,
Jalen Mills.
Yep.
Hunter Henry.
And keep in mind, a lot of their defensive guys sat out last year too.
Mhm.
Like this, I think we talked about it on our show before. Like Belichick plays chess.
Mm-hmm.
He knew like he had guys sit out. And like you guys said, he's going to have the easier strength of schedule. Like they're going to be playing like the third worst team from each division because the Jets were worse than them. But they're not going to have a heavy schedule next year. I think the only question is like who's going to be your quarterback.
Well, I mean, right now, I think Cam Newton will go in this direction. This was one of those stories if we have time, but you know what? Now's a good time. Why not? They re-signed Cam Newton, which I think surprised some people in some ways, but they did it knowing that they had this plan in mind. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this deal, if you look at all the players that are involved, they signed Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, both tight ends. When Cam Newton went 15-1, do you know who his number one receiver was?
Olsen.
Greg Olsen. So what do? They go out and get two tight ends for him. I think in some ways, I think Belichick had a little bit of a learning curve of his own where he had to learn how to live post-Brady. So there was a little bit on both sides where Cam Newton is trying to find his way. Belichick and Entourage are trying to figure out their own way. But you see them open up the wallet here, and you're seeing what's happening where the team is – they have a softer schedule. Miami's still trying to figure some stuff out. The Jets are the Jets. That's 4 games right there. Say you win three of those 4. Now you need 7 of the next 13. You have you drop down in the standings versus previous years. So you have a little bit of a softer schedule in there. You will be playing Carolina. You will be playing Atlanta. And we've established that right now, New Orleans is a wild card pick. We're not really sure where that's going to go. They're playing, like I said, they're playing Tampa. That's a different thing entirely there. But it is easily plausible that team can win 10, 11 games this year with the schedule that they have, with the understanding of working more in line to what Cam Newton can bring to the table, and the fact that, frankly, they just opened up the wallet and they brought in, like I said, Aguilar, Bourne. They brought in a lot of players here who I think can add a lot of an offensive punch that right now Cam Newton needs. Like I said, especially from the tight end standpoint, a lot of bank, but I think it's going to pay off pretty well in the long run. They're going to take the division? No, that division belongs to Buffalo for the next few years. But they get a wild card.
So, I mean, I look at Cam Newton last year. He started off strong. He got COVID. He came out weak. If you're watching basketball, Jimmy Butler lost like 30 pounds with a mild case. Some of the Celtics, the same thing. Some of the athletes who get mild cases are in better shape to begin with than us, which always means that how much, if an athlete loses 1% lung capacity for 3 months, what's that like for them versus for the average person who doesn't use their lungs to that capacity? Their muscles, a little bit of drain on them can totally mess with them. Now, that's giving Cam the benefit of the doubt. He looked good, and then he stopped looking good. Can he throw a football still? Or is his body too beat up? I don't know. It looks like Belichick has also set up that Cam Newton deal similar to the other deals that we've kind of talked about with there he can go. Like if he makes the trade and he gets Lance at number 3, or he does something to get Russell Wilson himself, so be it. Is Russell Wilson willing to give up this control he wants if he's going to go play with Belichick and have a chance of ripping off 3-4 Super Bowl appearances in the next 6-7 years? He might change his tune. Same with Watson. Like, okay, you know what? I don't want control. I want Super Bowl appearances. And then now you have those weapons. He's shown that he can work with 2 tight ends before. He also got Davis and Aguilar. Now, Davis and Aguilar are both guys who never quite lived up to their potential. but they're still guys who are real quality NFL wide receivers, just not what they were supposed to be. But if you give them somebody who can throw them the ball, throw them open, and they're being treated as number 2 wide receivers, and nobody can cover them underneath because you have to cover the tight ends. They still have Michelle catching the ball in the backfield. I mean, it is an offense that can work. And, you know, I'm not with you on Buffalo. I understand that Allen has made strides every year.
Mm-hmm.
Let Allen get through this year without, what was the term we call it, franchising? And I'll be an Allen believer. Allen does it this year, and I will predict it for the remainder of the next 15 years, whatever it is. But I need to see it one more year in a row before I'm willing to say that Allen is going to keep Buffalo better than New England.
Yeah, and I think with the big thing with those tight ends too, it's like the post Gronk era, and it's also their traditional tight ends, their block, shed, catch tight ends that we've talked about before. And Obi just said, like, they still got Sony Michel, they've still got they've got a pretty deep, running back core. Cam may not have to throw the ball 25 times a game. Like they may become a smash mouth, grind them out team where they just. Because Sony Michel is another guy, kind of like Jameis Winston. Didn't really play as much. Even when he came back, it was like he played like one game. I think it was he came back against Miami, and he looked good. And I'm like, oh, okay. I was thinking of picking him up for my fantasy team. And then they were like, we'll go with Harris. We'll go with, this guy. And I was like, you're definitely pumping the brakes this season. Like the low-key tank was on in New England. Like Belichick knew what he was doing. They're like, no, it's a throwaway year. I'm not going to waste any, especially running back. So like you only have like a 3 or 4 year shelf life. So why waste it on a year we're not going to be, contenders, and bring them back next year and be a completely, revamped team with a new mindset and new game plan.
It'll be interesting to see, but like I said, I think they will. I'd be surprised if they didn't make the playoffs this year. Russell Wilson, there's been ties to Chicago with him. Ironically enough, Andy Dalton is now tied to Chicago, which I wonder if is actually going to hurt some of the bargaining that's going to be involved if they're going to try and make a deal with Seattle. But since we're talking about Russell Wilson, where do you think he's going to go?
Seattle.
Yeah.
Same way. Where's Deshaun Watson going? Houston.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see these guys leaving anywhere. They're just because you're asking for too much as well. Like the Lions and like the Rams, that deal, like there had to be something on the side, like, hey, let's make this deal and let's just like destroy anybody else's chances of making a deal. Because if they wanted to see these guys go, they would not have made the deal for that. Like the Goff trade, I think, was way overpriced, but the Rams never have number 1 picks anyway, first round picks anyway. So they're like, yeah, whatever. We got this guy with our last number 1 pick. Like we haven't had a number 1 pick in 5 or first round pick. We don't need one. But yeah, the Jared Goff trade made it almost impossible for anybody to acquire Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson because you're just asking for too much. And like I said, Deshaun Watson going to the Jets or whatever team, like you're just going to go from the situation you're in Houston to being in the exact same situation in whatever new city, whatever new team you go
now
to.
In a colder environment, too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing too. Like where you're going to, like mostly outdoor teams, bro. It's going to be miserable and cold on top of being just miserable.
Yes. Being able to play. Yeah, go ahead.
I disagree. I mean, I think when Wilson is staying in Seattle, he's not asking hard enough for a trade, and the places he wants to go, 2 of them already signed their quarterback. I mean, it's possible that something can happen in New Orleans, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Chicago is just miserable with what they do. So I don't see him going. But Watson, that's going to go, I think, the way of Carson Palmer. I think Watson's going to retire. And I think that Houston's going to have a choice. Either get nothing from him and, just keep a stiff upper lip, as you will, or do what Cincinnati did. Eventually, trade him for anything. Because now, he's retired. And I think once he retires, now this I'm not positive on, I think once he's retired, he's no longer under contract. He's just, if he wants to be on a team, has to go back to Houston. So I think the no trade clause is gone if he retires versus sitting out. But sitting out is going to be too expensive, whereas retiring doesn't cost him anything. So I think he's going to eventually retire this year and force them to trade him somehow, somewhere for his rights.
I think, does he come off the cap when he retires too then? Because then they could just kind of go out and find somebody else too that they have all this extra cap space with. Then see, that's like where it becomes a double-edged sword. Because if all that money comes off the cap, it's like, oh, thanks. Okay, now we're just going to go out and sign this guy, that guy, draft this guy, get this quarterback, and be competitive.
You don't retire until it's too late. You retire when Andrew Luck retired.
Yeah.
Which he didn't do in that way, but just say, you know what, Mitch, I'm done playing these fines. I'm not going to play for your team. There's nobody out there. I'm retiring. Good luck.
And then just get it basically an analyst deal, like basically now Drew Brees has joined NBC as well. So he land the job like that easily enough. And
or go play in the Russian league like Ilya Kovalchuk did.
Yes, we don't talk about that. Yeah. All right, so we got about 25 minutes left. It's already 30 minutes into the show. Thank you, as always, for being part. Find us on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and also on Spanglish Sports Den on Facebook. It is time now for one of my favorite parts of the show, Obscure Sports. I told you guys about this earlier. We're going to be talking a little Bosa ball right now. So if you don't mind, Obi, if you mind actually just going into it a little bit, explain Bosa ball to the audience while I pull up a video.
Okay, so Bosa ball is... imagine you're looking at a lake and there's a big floating raft out there. Well, now we're going to take that raft, we're going to bring it inland, and we're going to put a big trampoline in the middle and then divide that trampoline with a net and play volleyball, but use all of our appendages. That's the easiest explanation. Oh, and we must play the game with loud music blaring. That's a key point to this game, and in all of my analysis, that ties in. So that's Bosa ball.
I was watching the video before, and I'm actually playing it in the background silently too now. It's got, that's the video that Scott just put up was the one I was watching. It's like a bounce house meets remember slam ball? It's like a bounce house meets slam ball with volleyball and soccer, and even volleyball now you can use all your appendages. Like it's completely legal. I've seen at the college level guys use their feet, guys header the ball over. So it's like wild. I had to turn the sound off when I just started replaying it because like the music, I'm like I wouldn't hear anything else besides the music playing in the background.
But yeah, basically this is Bosa ball right here. The idea is that you get a certain amount of points depending on what you end up doing and what part of your body. What part of your body action is used. So you get a point for a hand, you get extra points if it's a head, if it's a foot, if it's anything like that. It's a sport that is honestly like volleyball and trampolines. And I think it's so absolutely amazingly cool. And this is videos here from the 2013 championship, but it's popular in Europe. Obviously it's Brazil as well. So warmer clients granted, but wanted to get your thoughts on it, want to get your reviews on it. You can score upwards of 5 points if you actually score, like see a shot like that it counts as 3 points, I believe it is, because you used a foot on that. I think it's honestly just a really, really cool idea, a really cool sport. But I want to get your reviews. I want to get your thoughts. What have you got, gents?
All right.
Let Obi go first. Obi's always our leadoff guy for this.
Yeah, stuff. Right. So oddity and stupidity, I gave it a D, meaning it's not that odd or stupid. Another of the many great versions of volleyball. I think at this point we need to do a show on just versions of volleyball because we've had 2 here already that we've gone over, this and Sepak Takraw, and this is just another one, just a D. The obscurity, I gave it a C, almost maybe a C plus. It's kind of obscure because when you watch that 23 World Cup highlights, 2013 World Cup highlights, they're not, and you can tell when you don't know a sport and you see the people playing, like, those dudes or those ladies, they are great athletes. These guys and ladies did not look like great athletes. They look like good athletes out there having a good time. I got no problem with that. But that suggests that's even more obscure in the places that know it because the best athletes aren't going, well, I couldn't play soccer in Brazil. Let me look at this sport. Playability and enjoyability, a B. Like volleyball, you can imagine, just playing this game at a barbecue with a bunch of folks. I believe, Rob, you played volleyball in college, so there's always that guy who's your wrist spiking it right down your face when you play this game. It's not like a pure A. It's like a B. But the watchability, this was an A. It's everything that's great about volleyball. And then the music is just part of the game. And a part of the culture. And Bassa, when I did the research on this, that's a word for like swag, if you will, or excitement or joyousness. And so, yeah, I could definitely go to the beach and watch people play and make this a whole day, 2-day weekend. It looked like a blast to just watch and have fun at, for sure. And then just because I have these stupid lists, it's now second in score the ball
Okay.
and first in volleyball, which is now a new list that I've added is the volleyball.
So now you have a we've covered so many sports at this point that you're now actually have a volleyball list where you rank those. Okay.
Yes.
Sub-filtered for volleyball.
I was going to say, basically he's going to have like, sand sports after that, short sports, winter coat parka sports.
Yeah,
We do enough smoothing. So, Rob, how about you, sir?
I gave it for oddity and obscurity. I gave it a B- just because of the combination of everything they put together, like the bouncy house, air, playing surface, the trampoline. So I thought that was a unique twist to the volleyball derivatives that we've covered before. And I said, like, it reminded me of slam ball, which I loved watching on the Spike Network back in the day. Playability, enjoyability, watchability, like as a volleyball guy, and the fact that it's like a Brazilian sport. I mean, see, and the music in it, like it is one of those things, like you could go to a beach and you'll see people playing. You're like, what is this? And it's got that like polarizing magnetic, like it'll draw people in just walking by. Like, what is this? Like, oh my God, this looks great. And there is like a level of athleticism to it too. Like I'd love to see like a gymnast get involved in this, like an Ali Reisman or somebody, like where you can hit the trampoline and start doing like twists and then like attack the ball with like your foot or your hand or your head, like
Shaolin soccer like level.
Yeah, exactly. Shaolin soccer. And when you sent me the link, I was like, it's a Bossa ball, and I'm like, Bossa, like it was like things we're gonna cover, and I'm like, Bossa ball. I'm like, what did the Bossa brothers sign with the same team or something in the NFL? And I'm like, oh no, this is something completely different, and it's awesome. Like I loved it.
Yeah, I love it too. For me personally, oddity, you know what? I got to give it a C or C-. I don't think anybody out there knew about this. It's really kind of bizarre that something like this, in the era of these embracing odd sports, that this one has flown so far on the radar. I would consider even giving this like a D+ even. Obscurity, kind of the same part of that. I don't think people really know a lot about it, and that's a disappointment to me. Let me back this up. The oddity part, I'm going to bump that up a little. I'm going to make that a C+, because of the fact that it is volleyball. Everyone knows volleyball. The trampoline aspect of it, I think, is cool. The fact that you don't have to, and you're a lot of times encouraged not to use your hands, I think is great for both the oddity part of it and also the playability part. Which playability, I'm giving that a B-. I don't know about you guys, but I'd rather be one of the ones on the outside. Although the one in the middle, I think, is going to have a lot more fun. You see some of the spin kicks that were involved, headbutts, whatever you got to do to be able to actually get the ball over the top of the net. Playability, like I said, easier on the outside. I'll give that maybe a B-, B+. Watchability, oh yeah. This is an A+. I don't think we've ever done it like an A+ watchability. But
this might be the most watchable obscure sport that we've uncovered so far. Just the environment and everything, everything that it puts together.
What I think is unique about it, I mean, we've covered a lot of obscure sports, but we've never really covered like really obscure, cool sports. We've had like pumpkin racing, cheese rolling, or like last week we had bog snorkeling, because somewhere in Europe, what you want to do is you want to swim underwater in a dirty, muddy bog. This one here just looks like a lot of fun to do, and I think it's real easy to start rallying behind whoever's actually playing and have your team that you're very, very quickly rooting for, country notwithstanding. I'm just talking on like a smaller level there, where you just see certain people and you watch them go up and down, bouncing around like that. And you're just like, I like those guys. I want to root for that team. And you just immediately use the word magnet, but you magnetize towards a certain team there and you pull for them as long as you can. So yeah, of all the sports that we've had, this one might be the most watchable of all the bunch at this point.
I think you guys made two good points, which I tried to make, and I'm not sure I did. Rob, when you were saying you'd like to see Ali Reisman or something do it, that's what I was getting with. Like, you could really imagine what this sport would look like with some amazing athletes doing. And I think you both touched on it. Like, this is not a festival sport. Like, Scott, you were mentioning some of the sports that they're just a festival and it's something stupid to do. But it's got that festival atmosphere, right? Mm-hmm. That's what it's just like, I want to go. I want to watch.
And
You
I
know what
think
it kind of
also
reminds me of too is and remember the end one basketball videos like that, like the hype and it's the environment. And honestly, I think it's the fact that it probably has a lot of roots in Brazilian, style and culture with being a volleyball and soccer sport, and it's probably huge down there. And that's like having played volleyball, like even working, there's just when you see Brazilian athletes, like there's just a life to them, like an energy, and you could feel that energy just watching the video. You're like, this has that vibe to it.
I think what also works for this as well is it's a 12-month out of the year sport, depending on where you are. Some of the sports that we have are relegated to one specific location during a specific time of year, just because it's the right conditions for it. This is one of those sports that you can take this in the US, like Southern California. You can do this in December, in SoCal. The benefit is the fact that it can be played at any time of year that you want. And that gives it a little more flexibility as far as being an obscure, but honestly very enjoyable sport there.
And you can move it indoors too, even in cold climates. That looks like it's the size of like a volleyball court or basketball court. And you just have to inflate it in an arena, and you could play it in December in New Jersey if you wanted to.
You could fill up MSG with that thing. You could pound it, it'd be great.
But if Patrick Ewing shows up, is he allowed to walk through the back, corridor, or does he need a credential if we play at MSG? Inside joke for anybody who's not in the New York area and knows what happened.
Well, speaking ironically enough of Patrick Ewing, we got about 15 minutes left. Like I said, find us always on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and Spangler Sports Den on Facebook, part of Spangler Sports World, Zingo TV channel 250, and pretty much everywhere you can find it. Mentioned Patrick Ewing, who was once number one in the draft when he went to the Knicks, but prior to that, he was with Georgetown, which is my segue now to NCAA and March Madness, which starts in 2 days. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this a little bit. I want to get your ideas on this. Right now, I'm going to be straight. I am pulling for Gonzaga straight up. They had the potential of being the first NCAA team since Bobby Knight's team in 75-76 to have a full-out perfect season all the way through. Ironically, prior to that, John Wooden had, I think, 4 or 5 in the 15 years prior. Bobby Knight had one in 75-76. And frankly, women's basketball, it's not uncommon to have. But in NCAA men's basketball, the idea of having a full-out perfect season is an absolute rarity. So I'm pulling for Zaga. So
the first thing I want to point out, and I've been trying to get this out there for those who haven't noticed, 1976 season was the last time we had a team with the perfect season. It was also the last season where both Duke and Kentucky were not in the tournament. Good sign for Gonzaga. I've been catching up the last week on the NCAA tournament, and Gonzaga is a legit good team. They've beaten some good teams. The oddity is all of the good teams they beat already this season all ended up on their quarter of the bracket. But the Big 10 and the Big 12 have just been phenomenal basketball conferences this year, battling each other. So although I'm not going to lie, my heart is with Gonzaga. I'd like to see them, finally get the championship that they've sort of always deserved as a smaller school. And, used to be a bracket buster, and then they started becoming everyone's Cinderella and then going to always disappointing. It'd be nice for them to finally win it in this year in the perfect season. I am going to take Michigan overall to take this. I've liked them all season.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm all about like Gonzaga because I work for the mid-major schools, so I'm always a big fan of like the bracket buster. I always say like my one claim to fame a few years ago was I was like the 0.02% of people who picked Florida Gulf Coast when they upset Patrick Ewing's alumni Georgetown that year and then went on the run to the Sweet 16. Like I was one of the few people who picked them in my bracket when they and I had them going to like the round of 32. Like I wish I could have changed it because I would have just kept rolling until they lost even longer. But yeah, I love the mid majors. I love the bracket busters. And it's weird. I was looking at the bracket right now and it threw me off when I first looked at it because all the play-in games are on, like, if you look at the bracket, they're all on the same side of the bracket. Like they're in the East and West and not in the South and Midwest, which is also interesting too. So, because I always think like the playoff game is weird because first of all, it's never the 16 seeds, which would make way too much sense that you're playing in for the last 4 spots. It's like Oh, actually, one is the 16 seed. Where was the other? The other one is the 11 seed, an 11 seed, two
Other years it's
16.
been the 5 seed. Like they just make it up as they go along.
Yeah, it's like 2 16s and 2 11s this year, but it's always like an 11. And I'm like, that's not a play-in game. But yeah, I think when it's the 16 seed, like the 1 seed really doesn't have much to worry about. And Virginia's the only team that's ever lost to a 16 seed. But the 11 seed games are always weird because you get a team, especially if it's somebody that's kind of underrated. Now they're warmed up. Like they've got that one game and all of a sudden they come in, you're like, oh, okay, they'll be tired. They're like, no, they're like firing on all cylinders. And before the half, you're down 15 or 20 and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? But yeah, I like Gonzaga, same reasons you guys do. I always joke, I'm like, I want to see like, who is it out? Like Oral Roberts go on a run at 15 from the South. Like, give me like a random team, like who's like Austin St. Or Abilene Christian at 14 in the East. Like, yeah, give me one of those teams. Like, I love those teams. I love watching Steph Curry when he was with Dayton for that reason, man. So I'm just happy we have it back this year too. Like it was something. That was one of the bigger voids, probably biggest voids in sports last year. Was like no tournament. You're like, okay, what am I going to do in March? Like,
yeah, and it was right at the beginning of quarantine. Absolutely. So yeah, it's a shocker.
And it'll be interesting to see how, if COVID affects it, because they're not, postponing games. Like if half your team is out, that's an L. Like
there's 4 teams on deck. If you get COVID protocol this week to go in, I can't remember which ones they are.
Okay. Oh, the bubble is like first 4 in, first 4 on hold this year, not first 4 out. Like you're not out yet. Hold on, we'll get back to you in a couple minutes. Yeah, I know. Like NJIT and FDU, like they're in the America East Conference and the NEC, and NEC teams were like a couple. I think Maine started off really bad, and they just opted out. They were like, well, and I totally understand it. Like they opted out. I think the kids were able to save their eligibility. The teams just opted out completely. But the schedules were wild. Like it was every day. It was like, okay, we're not playing Saturday. We're playing Monday, Tuesday. We're not playing Monday, Tuesday. We're playing. Teams were testing positive, and the conferences were juggling everything. So it's like having the tournament back is this nice sense of normalcy. Probably for the first time in just over a year, almost to the day, where we're like, okay, like things are getting back to normal finally for us in the sports world.
Which, in some ways, I just want to go off topic a little bit here. Dan, you guys have probably seen the Dick Vitale commercial for guys.
Yes.
On one hand, I like it, and on the other hand, I feel kind of sad by it because he's been doing, March Madness. It's March Madness, baby. Has been his line for decades. Seeing him there, he doesn't look as young and spry as I remember, and I'm kind of saddened by that. It's like seeing Dick Clark towards the end,
Yeah, I know, but it actually, it's more to me like seeing John Madden at the end. When John Madden, his shtick had finally been like, all right, okay, John. And that's how I feel about, even when I was watching him on like some of the shows where he was getting ready, talking about the tournament itself for real. And you could actually see how excited he really was, even for Dickie V. In his face, you could see the excitement level was higher than his body was able to present to have it back. But yeah, he's, but you know what? I promise you that if you're him, he's doing it because he wants to be. He doesn't have to be. And he's excited. Like I said, you could see it in his face, even though the babies and everything else, but the throat were not up to par.
Yeah, then when you hear like he's gonna be like the first time you hear that like in game, oh, this kid's a diaper dandy, he's a Skywalker baby. Like it's even if there's not, your mind's gonna register that energy. Like I feel like I'm gonna hear it and it's just gonna. I'm like, okay, it's like I watched professional wrestling, like The Undertaker in his later matches, like may not have been as good as he once was, but you find it, like you can kind of go to that place mentally and emotionally and be like, it's still there. Like I still feel it. And I think he's going to bring it back to it. It may not be at the same volume and the same energy level, but I think just having it back for most people is going to be good enough, and they'll be able to internally kind of make up the difference within themselves.
Sure. And we'll also shout out Jersey represent here too. From Passaic.
Yes, that's right. And Rutgers is in the tournament too this year to the Big Ten.
Rutgers is in the tournament, yes.
So, yes, I've got Rutgers going to I think, Elite Eight.
Okay, you got them going that far.
Yeah, because I'm a homer. Like,
respect.
I got them winning on the women's side. I'm a homer. I'm all in.
I worked some of their games last year at the women's game. So yeah, Vivian's cool. Very, it was all like I sat right next to their bench. So to see her do her thing, I was like, okay, like got a legend over here. Like,
for those outside New Jersey, Rutgers is our in-state school. Yeah. So it's the one that gives like a massive discount to anybody. So a lot of us, a lot of people who graduated ended up going to like the Virgin community or a lot of the local schools. If you went to Rutgers, it's like, yep, I went to Rutgers. Like 80% discount if you're living in Jersey.
Or you transferred, like a lot of college. You went to community college, JUCO, and then you transferred after the second year to Rutgers. So, good party school too. One of my good friends from high school went there. A lot of good times down there.
Yeah, a few of our graduating class went there too. Because again, it's Jersey, and
I think they're the only Jersey team in, so we're taking the homer route with them. I got to do my bracket tonight, so I was
actually going to ask you about that, and then I got sidetracked and never did. I didn't know if you had the homer feel on this one. If you wanted to just root for, Scarlet Knights and such as it is,
I'll root for the basketball teams before I probably root for the football team. But it's just because I have friends who are alumni who are obnoxious alumni football. I'm like, you guys aren't that good. I understand. It's one of those teams where like you root for them and I want to root for them, but the fans, like some of their fans are so obnoxious. I'm like, when they start winning again, we can we can get back to that level. And they're just like, Shiano is back. And I'm like, you still got to rebuild the team. Like, calm down. Like right now you're kind of a doormat in the Big Ten for football, but I hope you get there. I hope you do well. Let's take our time, baby steps. It's like basketball. Like you got the women are solid. Like the men just like, that was the one weird thing was like, they went to the Big Ten and you got Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, Indiana, and you're thinking basketball, you're just going to get kind of steamrolled too. And all of a sudden you're like, no, like, okay, they're in it. Like, but it's also, I think, coming out of the Big East, which I think is probably one of the most underrated basketball conferences of all time. So like they got out from like the monster of the Big East and were like, oh, we can hang with everybody else in the power conferences.
I mean, I think Rutgers is, we only got 2 minutes left here, but I think Rutgers has the potential to be an all-stud team in all sports. I mean, you just look at the kids who come out for football and basketball and go to other states. If you can keep them in state, you can be competitive.
All right. So, we got to wrap this up. I'm seeing all the notes coming here. 5 minutes left, 4 minutes, 3-2. So it's going to wrap it up for us. As always, this show is available on Spanglish World Radio Network. Check us out at SpanglishSportsWorld.com for all the news and programming that are on there. We are currently on 4 different continents across 35 different platforms. Antarctica is not one of them yet, but I will make that point that it will happen one day. I'm going to keep saying that until it does actually happen. Any final thoughts from you, gents?
This Saturday night, we'll be doing me, myself, and I at 10 p.m., and we're going to cover the first part of the first round of the NCAA tournament. So, which,
by the way, quick props on that. Last week, you had former NFL player Dave Fiore on the show, so congratulations. You discussed crabs and football. The eating kind, not the other kind. Just want to clarify that right there. So,
good kind of
Rob, I'll see you in a few hours.
Yes, we'll be back on Tales from the Film Set at 9 o'clock.
Thanks as always for tuning in. Find us one more time on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and on Facebook at Spangler Sports Den. I'm Scott Churchson. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night. Have a great rest of the day, Tim. Rest of the week, Tim.